Okay, I want to welcome you all for the second of our 5 sessions of astrology classes. We're going to cover basic astrology, and then I'm going to move you very quickly into advanced interpretation. I don't want to jump too fast ahead because I know some of you are ready for that, but I need to consider those that are new in the class and never looked at it before, studied it. We had one class last week, which I covered some of the essentials, the basics, the aspects, and their interpretation. To me, the most important part of astrology is understanding aspects between planets. It doesn't mean that houses aren't important. They are important. But one of the things I've discovered in astrology is that even if you don't know the time, which we have a couple people, one person I know for sure doesn't or can't find their time, born in Jamaica, and they didn't have it on the birth certificate. But you can still tell a lot from that chart, because you can still tell what planetary energies are going on and what's happening to the moon, for example, which is what? The moon is your soul, represents your feelings, your emotional state. It represents your mother in your chart, whereas Saturn represents your father, okay? So when I look at a chart, many of you know this because I've done some of your charts, I've worked on them. I can generally see the pattern of your life in terms of parental influences very often. Divorced parents, if they've been divorced or separated, I can generally tell that. If there's been something that's caused the separation, I can tell that. And I can also generally tell if you've got physical problems by looking at Saturn, particularly in Mars. Now, why can I do that is because I know if they're afflicted, and particularly if you have a Saturn and a Mars affliction, then I'm going to be able to pick up a lot of the injurious influences of a chart if they're afflicted. That doesn't mean that because everybody has Mars and Saturn in their chart, that Mars and Saturn works detrimentally, but it can. So it makes a very quick perception in that chart. And some of you I've never met before that are students that I've talked to on the phone, and I've read your chart to you a little bit on the phone without going into it in detail, but you know that I can see things that I absolutely have no way of knowing. One of the things is I want to feel secure about, and that is that each and every one of you in this class feels comfortable with sharing. If you don't, let me know that, because I don't want to embarrass anybody or put anything up here that's going to be personal that might make you feel uncomfortable. Most all of our classes have become like family. Very supportive of each other and very encouraging, and there's no judgmentalness in these classes. I don't see it at all. People are very open and welcoming about sharing in this class. So as long as you're comfortable with that, though, again, after I said that, you have to be. So anyway, all right. So what I want to do is I want to take you through a quick basic stuff initially, okay? For some of you, it'll be repeat and it will be old hat, but you can never get too much of it, because the more you learn the language of astrology, there's a good book that's been out for many, many, many years. It's called A to Z Astrology. Boy, interpreter. Oh, I've got to go look for it again. It's by Llewellyn, George Llewellyn. They're a big publisher of astrology books, and it's a huge book, and I've got it here. I could get it out. But it's just got a lot of key words in it. I love key words. If you look up, you go in the book, and I had it when I was studying in my solitudinal years of, some of you know, some of you don't. In prison, I spent 9 years in prison as a young man. I always tell that up front because people say, where'd you study astrology? I studied in a cell for 9 years, and I had a captive clientele. They didn't go anywhere. So I could read and see the influences of astrology even better there, because people, I realized after, especially coming out of prison, I realized that the less evolved a person was, the more they were subject to act out according to these influences. They seemed to have less control over these influences. But if I had a Mercury-Mars affliction in a chart in prison, I surely didn't worry about a car accident. Nobody was driving around inside the walls with cars. But out here I would. I'd be concerned about a Mercury-Mars affliction. It has potential damage to communication transportation. But in prison, that would end up being a fight because of what they said. They'd get into something because of their mouth. Mercury, communication. And so Mars is anger, and it's conflict, and it's, all those things. So, I'd tell somebody, look at, I remember telling my best friend, Bernie, I never forgot this. I told him, I said, you're going to get in a fight and you're going to get hurt unless you really watch yourself. And I said, it's really, I see a potential head injury, so, you'd be really careful. And he was a fighter. He was a Leo. Leos can be indomitable. And he was a fighter. And he was good. I hate to say it, but you live in an environment like that, you better learn how to handle yourself. It's not like out here, excuse me, please don't do that, you turn that cheek, you're turning another one. So anyway, enough of this. So anyway, I remember telling Bernie he was going to get in a fight, and we were walking, it was a really strange story. We were walking over to the chow hall, and there's a certain place in there where you make a corner, and it's in between some buildings, and the guard towers can't see you. When you live in there for years, you know every little corner, you know where you can do things where you can, and where you can grab ass and where you can't. And so, as we round this corner, Bernie grabs me from behind, and you wouldn't do that in front of the guard towers. They're liable to shoot you, think you're fighting. You know what I mean? You don't do that. But here you could do this. So he grabs me from behind, takes me over on the grass, and he spins me around about 3 times and sets me down. And I turn like this because I'm ready to, it's playful. It's all play. But I'm going to confront him. So as soon as I hit the ground, I go like this. Like this, I break his nose with my elbow. I was the instrument of the prophecy, but never would have known that. You see what I'm saying? That's how accurate it was for me. I used to see it all the time. Obviously, I didn't, there's no way to predict. It was me going to break his nose. But that's how I've seen astrology work. I've seen it so much. I've seen things. Or I'd tell somebody, I used to do this. I quit doing it. I used to tell people when to gamble, when to not. If you play till 12:30 or 12:20, if you stop, then you'll win. But if you quit, if you don't quit, you're going to lose it. And they'd always quit. I mean, not quit. They'd always keep playing, and they'd always lose their money. You couldn't. It didn't matter what advice you gave them. So things like that. And I began to. But then I decided that wasn't a good use of astrology. But then I got out, and I had a lawyer friend of mine who wanted me to know if he could trade commodities. Could I help him trade commodities with my astrological knowledge? And I said, I think so. So I started doing that. I made him $20,000 in a week, and he was excited. And so he gives me $2,000, and I said, well, let me play with it now. Put it back in commodities, and let me gamble a little bit with this stuff, because I'm really on top of it. No, I know what I'm doing. But there was an influence that was coming up, and the books basically said 24 to 72 hours, this influence can cause problems. Now I'm involved in this. My judgment's not very good. And I'm greedy, because I just made $2,000 and I'm making more, and it's starting to grow. And this thing comes up, this influence comes up, and I don't get out at 48 hours, which I should have. I waited 72 and I lost everything. What's the message and all that? I don't think I was meant to be doing this with for mammon, for money. I don't think it was it's a spiritual tool for me. It's a very gift that I have, and I want to use it correctly. So I've always been very wary of using it for monetary gains in that sense, okay? But there are people that do. There are people that make a living with stock markets and things with astrology. It's another area of astrology, So there's a lot of different areas. The more you get into it, you realize you can study it the rest of your life. I mean, there's medical astrology. And, I'll touch on that, I can see if again, we're back to Saturn. I told you, did I tell you not? What did I tell you about medical things? Didn't I tell you something?
I think you told me that I needed to be careful about my bones, how fragile they might be.
Yeah, right. And was that?
I probably have arthritis.
Yeah.
Which I do.
But see, that's in the chart. It shows that weakness. It shows that propensity, okay? Why? Because, there's an affliction to Saturn in your chart. So Saturn is the skeletal frame, your teeth and your bones, okay? In this country, we're very blessed. You go to other countries, the people's teeth are a mess. They don't have what we do. I was at the dentist yesterday getting my teeth cleaned, and she said, we were talking about this. She said, Ron, every country's not like the United States, where they got to teeth's got to be whitened and straightened and all this. You look at other countries, they don't do that. And a lot of countries where they have a tooth problem, they just pull the tooth, and that's the end of it. They don't replace it. They don't do anything. They don't cap it. They don't do anything. So what I'm saying is, these astrological influences in this country aren't as apparent. Teeth and bones, when you see astrological influences like that in a chart. Okay, let me take you through a quick little thing. I can digress, as you all already know that. I digress, and I'm not very scripted at all. So try to keep me on path. My wife is always trying to do that. She finds it impossible. I'm not big on astrological horoscopes. I was reading one the other day on a computer, and it said these readings are for all signs. And I said, this only stretches the credibility of astrology when people read that stuff. I mean, how much sense does it take to know that if you have an astrological influence, it says that, because you're a Scorpio, that this particular thing's going to happen and you're going to have a great day this day because they put that in that little reading. Well, that same day, somebody dies that's a Scorpio. Somebody gets married. Somebody has a car accident. You see what I mean? Somebody gives birth to a child. If you can't collectivize astrology. But my thoughts about sun sign astrology is the only good I see in it is that it might lead people to astrology. It might make them look into it on a deeper level and begin to search and try to understand it in a different way. So, essentially, to me, it's a ruse when you see these sun sign stuff and these readings that are all generalized stuff. Where's this stuff coming from? White stuff all over. So, let me see if I can, it helps to turn it on. Too much technology today for me, even me. And I think I ran this one down because I didn't turn it off last time, so the battery's dead. Well, later I'll change it. Okay, we can do it the manual hard way. Computer. Okay, so-called sun horoscopes in the newspaper magazines are not really horoscopes, they're just generalized fluff. Okay, so we talked about that. But the interesting thing is you say, how do they come up with these sun signs? It's kind of interesting to know that. What they do is they pick the middle point of the sign. Okay, so let's say Sagittarian or any sign, there's 30 degrees in the sign. So what they do is they look at the aspects of around 15 degrees of that sign to the sun. That's all they're looking at the sun. So that's how you get a sun sign reading. Many, many years ago when I was in Chicago, I used to write an article for a magazine called The Visitor. It was an astrological. It was called Did You Know? I had a little thing about astrology and Did You Know? And I had another thing where I did a daily general forecast, astrological forecast for the signs. Or not for the signs, for the day rather, forgive me, for the day. So if I saw a big afflicted moon on that particular day, I would talk about the likelihood of being emotional difficulties, social and possibly political unrest because of that. But that was a different type of reading. And they loved it. I did that for a long time with these magazines, and I published that every day. Every week is what I did. But 4 major influences of astrology: the planets, the signs, the houses, and the aspects. Okay, I emphasize a lot the planets and the aspects of those 3 things or 4 things there. The signs also affect how the planets function, of course. If you have a moon, which rules naturally Cancer in your chart, it's a natural ruler of Cancer, it does well in water signs. It's an emotional symbol, okay, the moon. Now it's emotional, and it does well in emotional watery signs. It has a harder time in earth signs, and particularly Capricorn, which is the opposite sign it rules. Capricorn is Saturn's sign. So Saturn's sign in Capricorn is very analytical, very rational, and the moon's not. So you put it in a sign that's not comfortable in, it always sometimes has a difficult time. People that have moon in Capricorn, anybody in here happen to know if they do? Okay? Moon in Capricorn. Very often moon in Capricorn have a hard time with people touching them. They don't like people clinging on them. You know, I mean, they're doesn't mean they're not emotional and don't have feelings, but there's a fear of too much touch. You know, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Huh?
Not with me, with her, but
Yeah, with her. I'm talking about her. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
You know, and so if somebody, particularly a stranger, comes over and tries to hug her,
Yeah.
she'll have a hard time with it. Why? Because it's in a sign that's Saturn. Saturn puts walls up, right? I mean, once you know that person, that's different. She'll be the most clingy, lovey person in the world. But if you don't know her and you come up to her and you try to hug her, and I hug everybody in this room, don't I? But you know me. She feels safe with me. But see, so we need to understand these things. That's when the signs and the planets mean something. You see that?
How can you know if you've got a moon in Capricorn?
Because you're going to study that. You've got your chart right there, and you got your chart today. You got it first time, right? So let me look at your chart. Well, we're going to be doing everybody's chart a little bit in this room. I won't be giving you readings because you pay me to do that. Okay, if you want to come and find out what's going on for next year, that's a reading. I charge for that. You can do it. But I still will look at your chart. I'll still give you a lot of information about it. I'll still let you know what I can see. It's particularly about your past. What did I tell you on the phone the other day? I never met her before, but I said, do you mind me talking about you? No. Good. Here, I'm going to share this with you then. I wrote her this, but I didn't send it because I felt it was too personal. You don't mind this. I'm going to give it all to you. I'll give it all a copy of it. Actually, you can pass it around. You got yourself going here. Wait, who's this? This is Karen's chart. Forgive me, it wasn't yours. Karen.
Who's Karen?
Karen, I'm sorry. You don't mind me sharing?
No.
Good, Karen. We're going to talk about you then. Okay, just give you some idea of what we're doing here. Okay, so Karen's chart. Okay, I did do something with yours and I didn't send it. Remember, I started sending you an email, and I think I sent it after I talked to you because I didn't want to. I didn't send it. Good. Okay. Anyway, so Karen has it's an astrological lesson on your own chart for you to study and learn from. It's an explanation of what your life has experienced in the death of your husband. This is very serious stuff. It's very emotional. It touches some nerves. So that's why I'm always asking, feel comfortable with this, okay? You got an extra? Okay. So what's the point of this? Give that to Elena, would you, honey? So the point of this is that I wanted you to see just why astrology works. You won't understand this at this point, but as we go along, you're going to grab all this. It's going to make sense. I don't expect the first day you've been in an astrology class, this all will mean a lot to you. But for some of you, it's going to mean a lot, okay? Okay, it's an explanation of what your life has experienced in the death of your husband. It might seem to be challenging, but it is the aspects that denote the experiences we have in our lifetime. In your birth chart, you have your moon in the 8th house, squaring Saturn and Mars. Could it be any worse than that? Anybody knows astrology? Squares are oppositions, okay? What does a square and an opposition do? It produces a cross, okay? Let me try to get a pen that works, okay? Okay, so her moon's sitting over here. Her moon's sitting in the 8th house. This doesn't work very good. 8th house. And it's squaring off over here to Mars and Saturn from 11th. Okay? Two of the worst malefics in a chart is Mars and Saturn. Mars, we talked about this last week, so you missed that. But go back and watch the video, okay? Because we'll show you why you understand these symbols. The crosses and the circle and the crescent. The three basic parts of every planet. And so if you look at Saturn, it's basically, we got the circle, we got the crescent, and the cross. And if the cross dominates in that symbol, it means it's the physical meaning. And it can be suffering on a physical level. Okay, if it's the spirit on top, if Venus is what? Love? The spirit dominates the cross. Okay, Mars is the opposite. It's the cross being dominating over the spirit. We use an arrow, broken arrow, but it's a cross. So what do we have here is we have Mars saying, let's get it on to the woman, and a woman saying, Venus, like she's saying, no, let's make love first. Let's have love first. Let's not do that. Let's not get physical first. Because Mars always wants to be physical. Mars is anger, it's passion, it's all that stuff. We tend to associate it with men, okay? But not necessarily, it isn't. But Venus is, we always say, it's kind of feminine woman. but it's because love is first. If you look at Jupiter, we have the crescent over the cross, and then Saturn's the opposite of that. Saturn is not wanting to work. Okay, is the cross over the crescent. Actually, that crescent is turned into a little serpent if you look at it. Satan, the devil, the serpent. Saturn, that's where that came from. So Saturn, if you have the cross dominating the soul, the feelings, the soul, which is the moon influence, you've got what? The suppression of feelings. Satan is called, cold and unfeeling. Saturn, cold, unfeeling, calculating. That's Saturn. You see where I'm coming from? So Jupiter's the opposite. That's where we got Jesus. Jesus. Okay, Zeus, the ancient name for Jupiter. And what is all that about? That represents the crescent over the cross. The soul is dominating the senses, the five senses. And in that case, what do we have? Compassion. You see, instead of passion at Mars, we have compassion. Because we have this domination of the soul and feelings over the fifth. So, going back to your chart, Karen, okay? The Mars and Saturn, the two malefics, are crucifying on a cross. If you look at it like this, it's part of a cross. The moon. And guess where your moon is? Okay. Let's read it on. In your chart, you have the moon in the 8th house, squaring afflicted by Saturn and Mars, which indicates a soul, the moon, that must suffer the pain of Mars and loss of Saturn. Okay? Of death in the 8th house. Now, anybody knows astrology, the 8th house rules what? Death. You know that right away. So that's where it's at. That gives a message to me. Okay? Additionally, you were born with Scorpio, which means your spirit, your sun, must be brought to full strength and glory. Listen to this positive meaning of this. Through the lessons of death and resurrection. Your spirit's meant to evolve through this and become a resurrected being, a new being. This is meant for higher good, even though you don't know it. It's like, wow, how can this be good, right? But it's like all things work together for what? For good, for them that love God. So, that's why I mix it all. I'll preach to you and I'll also teach you. Okay? So the Scorpio, if you look at this sun, okay, you're born as Scorpio, which means your spirit sun must be brought to full strength and glory through the lessons of death and resurrection, which is Scorpio. Your sun is 150 degrees from the moon, an aspect called the inconjunct or quincunx. It's also called the finger of God. It forms a yod in your chart, as yours does. It's a very fated aspect, and you'll be discovering more about that as we read charts and interpret them. The yod is 150 degrees. When you have the yod, the sun sitting in her over here, and it's making a yod 150 degrees to here, and another 150 degrees to actually the north node, which I don't use always as a strong influence, but it's called the finger of God. Remember some of the classes where I don't know how many of you were in my classes where I was doing, we went, I did a lot of charts of people that have died, for example. And I did Robin Williams, for example. Remember the yod? Everyone had a yod in it, afflicted at the time of their death. Robin Williams had one. We did a young man that we went to his funeral. One of my students is a minister, and her son, 30-some years old, died. And we did his chart, and she was here. She watched the whole thing and saw that aspect formed in the chart. It's a very fated energy. Okay, you have that in your chart. You're born with that. Does that mean that this is a bad chart, and all that? No, it's not. It's like, what are the lessons to be learned from this? Okay, that's really what it's trying to do. Some of us have harder lessons. You say, but Ron, why? That's not fair. Why would I have this happen to me, right? Am I not speaking to your soul? But the point is that it's not to ask that question so much. It's not about that. It's karmic. It's karma. People often ask me about fate and free will. How much free will do we have if you can do this stuff? It's an eternal question. It's been asked since centuries back. There's been books and plays written about that, okay? If you're really a student of literature, you'll see there's been many things about this. Shakespeare discussed it even. So what is fate and free will? Fate means you just don't have any choice. Free will says you do. Well, we do within this power and this scope. what we miss in this whole thing of fate is called karma. What you've sown, you reap. Well, you didn't have a chance to sow it all in this life. You've done it in the past life. You see what I'm getting at? We live many lives, with many mansions, okay? I think I said that once. So anyway, you were born with Jupiter and trine Saturn in your chart, with Jupiter on the cusp of the 4th house, which means your senior years. Why the 4th house? 4th house rules your last years in your life, your senior years. Okay? It's and Jupiter and trine to Jupiter. Why? Saturn and Jupiter are trine, which means your senior years will be blessed with much peace, joy, and happiness. Now that's a promise. Okay? That's in her chart. Okay? Jupiter trine Saturn means you're able to integrate the yin and yang. And then I stopped writing and I sent it. Did I send this to you? I didn't send it, did I? Because I thought it was a little too much. I wanted to do it in a class, okay? So, you didn't just, oh, Ron, this is terrible, I want you to understand it, not walk away with, geez, I can't do anything, I got a bad chart. It's not about that. It's just that we have to look at what's causing things in a chart, why they happen. So
you're saying that technically we were supposed to be together, right? And
Right.
then he died, and then like the other astrologer I saw, she said that it was his soul gift to me,
in a way you couldn't see that as a gift, right?
I couldn't see.
No.
I could see where we were productive together and had a really good, fulfilling and fruitful life together. When neither of us had really much of anything, and then when we got together, we built a company together. We bought a house
Life
together,
blossomed for you, yeah.
And life blossomed, and then when I thought he was going to retire and we were going to travel together, he died.
Yeah.
He died at a very crucial time in his life. My whole world upside down.
Sure.
Because he died right before tax season, and he was our tax accountant.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just my loss, it was
All those
multiple
customers
people,
and people that were working with him,
which left me,
all his clients.
all his clients, so it
Yeah.
left me without. Okay, even though I had, an accountant by the business, but it's so little.
Yeah, sure, of
You
course.
know.
But
So
see,
I
these,
don't know what to do.
I know these are hard lessons, and let me just say this: it's not about. It's for me. I've learned something in life. Okay, I've literally been in hell and back. I mean, I've been through some of the worst conditions you can ever dream of or imagine. I've been tortured in Mexico by the police. I've been, I've seen so much in my life, and it all culminates in some simple truths. But we can't get there easy, because it takes a high amount of faith to get to that place. And what does it mean, faith? Faith in good is faith in God. And faith in God is counted unto you as what? Righteousness. It makes everything right. I can't explain how or why, but I can guarantee you, if I can get you, I said this to the last class, said it last time, I said, if I can change your attitude and your response to life, I'll change your life. I absolutely know I can. I know I'll make your life different. And I can't do it, but you have to do it. But you can't do it unless you let go of the fear and the negativity and the finding fault and blaming God and blaming others and blaming, why and what and all. It doesn't do anything. Get you nowhere at all. The only thing that will change your life is your response. I bang that over your heads. I know in these groups, every time you come, you get it again. Say, geez, Ron, you're going to preach to me again, right? Well, I will, because I want you to get it. I really want it to get in your head. The last thing I ever want you to do is be a victim, okay, to your charts. Okay, I told you that at the beginning. I'm not going to build you into an astrologer that says, oh my God, I can't get up today. Saturn's doing this in my chart. What a failure. What a wasted life to get into that consciousness. It's an astrology of possibilities. Okay, and not living in the past. Remember what I told you? What did Christ say to Peter? Peter symbolizes Saturn in the Bible. He was Saturn. Christ said, get behind me, Satan, to Peter. Why do you call him Satan? Because he is. Peter means rock. What does Saturn rule? Rocks, crystals, and minerals. Your teeth, your bones. That's why I talk about things like that. Saturn rules all that. Peter, to petrify, to make hard. That's what Peter was. He was Saturn. He was symbol. He was not worthy to be crucified. Remember that? He said, I'm not worthy to be crucified as my Savior. crucify me upside down. I'm not even worthy to be. That's what Saturn afflictions do in your chart. They make you feel like you're not worthy. They make you feel accused. Who was it I did the chart for? Somebody who was, I said, is accused as a mother. Now, stop a minute. Do you mind to share this? Okay, she walked up to me with a chart last class, and she said to me, will you look at my chart? She's got Saturn exact square in the moon, and it's really powerful in her chart. And I said, you've been accused of something in regard to, what did I say? You tell them, what did I say?
I'll be accused of something, and I said, oh, I remember when I had my son's father denied him, but they wasn't his kid because he was so light skin. I'm like, well, I'm light skin, hello? So he never believed the child was his.
Yeah. So she was accused as of being a mother, the moon. Get where I'm coming from. How did I see that? I knew there was something in there. I knew there was something. I don't know why specifically that. I think, there's a gift of prophecy as well as a gift of astrology, okay? But I see it. I see the specific thing. There's something very personal about her being accused as a mother, because the moon is the mother, okay? That's what it represents in the chart. So here, who would have known that was the manifestation of that? To be accused because somebody else told her husband that he wasn't the father of the baby or something because of whatever, and that's ridiculous, So it puts her through all this pain and suffering, and Saturn is the accuser of our brethren. That's Satan is the devil. It's called the accuser of our brethren, he who accused our brethren before God both night. Now, here's the interesting thing about Saturn in your chart. See, I told you I get on a digression here. I might even go back to the schedule again. But here's what I tell you about Saturn. Saturn is wherever it is, it's also where you accuse yourself. It's where you're carrying guilt. That's why the whole message of Christianity was, Jesus was what? Jesus, was forgiveness. You can't love others till you love yourself. What's the good book say? A man who loves his wife loves himself. You can't love others if you don't love yourself. You're going to hate, you're going to accuse, you're going to find others to accuse. It's called scapegoating. If you make me guilty, I'm going to find someone else to blame. Okay, that's just how it works. Go back to the story of the fall of man. You know where it occurred? Paradise. You know what paradise means? Para means beyond, and dice means to divide. Oh, Adam and Eve were in a place called beyond division. They were in a place called paradise until Diablos enters in. Well, who's Diablos? Comes from two roots. Di, divide, abalos, abolish. Oh, the devil, Diablos. And he enters in and he does what? He tempts Eve to eat of the fruit of the tree of what? The knowledge of good and evil. Good and evil. Here's a couple people. Got 2 more chairs, honey? Come on in. Glad you made it. Okay. Caught me in the middle of a sermon. Okay. So, there, everybody's happy. We got a seat for everybody. So Adam and Eve, I'm talking about Adam and Eve and the fall of man and how it happened, okay? They were in a place called paradise. Paradise means beyond division. Para is beyond, like parapsychology. It's a little beyond psychology. And then dice means to divide, paradise. But they were in a place beyond division until Diablos enters in. Diablos is what? Divide and destroy. Diablos, divide, di, abalos, abolish. The spirit of division, separation enters into a place that's beyond division and introduces a concept of eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Oh, where's the apple tree, Ron? I always heard it was an apple tree. No, it was this apple here. It's called Adam's apple. Huh? The misuse of this voice box. Adam's apple. What happened? As soon as they were confronted, they hid. What did they do? The first thing they did, they hid themselves. Why do you hide yourself? You ever seen a little child that's done something wrong? You confront him. He hides him, doesn't want to look in your eyes. Why? Because he's guilty. So they hid themselves and they were shamed. They covered their bodies. They were naked. But they hid themselves. They were shamed. So guilt starts out. But what happens when you're guilty? You find someone to blame. It's called scapegoating. That comes back to Capricorn, the goat. Amazing coincidence, isn't it? The goat, Capricorn. So what happens? It's not my fault. Adam says this to God. When God confronts him, what has thou done? It's not my fault. It's the woman. It's always the woman's fault. It's the woman. She made me do it. Boy, without a wife, what would we do? What would we do without a wife? No one to blame. So what happens then? Eve doesn't take the blame. Well, it was not my fault. The serpent beguiled me. You see the process of the fall of man. And that was the fall. And it's your fault, every one of you, when you accuse. And you walk around guilty. You see it? And you stop believing in the ultimate truth, that all things work together for good, for them that love God. You're not eating the fruit of the tree of what? Good and evil. It's all good, but you don't know that yet. You say, but how can that be, Ron? Because the devil unwittingly is but the servant of God. Okay? All partial evil serves universal good. You say, Ron, you don't believe that, do you? Don't you read the newspaper every day? I said, that's my faith. That's my faith. And that's the faith I want to inculcate in you guys. Huh? Boy, I got turned on to the sermon here tonight. But let me tell you something. I want you to grab this. I want you to get the message, get the mysteries, understand the truth, okay? So that's just one story we tell, okay? So when I talk about Saturn in your chart, and I see it afflicting your moon and Mars, both of them, both afflictors, afflicting that moon, I knew that your soul has been crucified. It's on that cross. Your soul's been crucified by that 8th house, which is the moon in death, the house of death. Huh? I didn't make this up. That's your chart. Huh?
Why? What did I do?
Why? What did I do? I told you it's karmic. I might be able to find why. Okay, I thought about it quite truthfully, looking into that one. I mean, I've seen so much in charts. I told you about the lady that sat down with me, and I'm doing her chart, and I see she's got a affliction to her moon, and it's in the 12th house, and I just knew what it was. Sometimes I just know. I don't know how I know, but I know. I said, you should have a scar. I told you this last week. You should have a scar on your breast. Remember that? She said, what do you mean? I said, you got a birthmark or something on your scar. She said, why would he ask me that for? She said, because you were stabbed in your past life by a lover. And she said, I do. I have it looks like a knife wound on my breast. And I said, can I see it? You're supposed to laugh.
The one man.
One guy in here. Yeah, one guy in here. Yeah, I'm waiting for a laugh. I'm thinking, you guys, come on, you got to get this. My humor's not that great today. Okay. So anyway, she told me, she said, Ron, it's really amazing. She says, all my life I've had a fear of knives. She says, if I walk in the kitchen and there's a knife on the counter, I've got to put it away. It bothers me. She says, I never understood that till now. So you say, how do you see it? Okay. Sometimes that's revealed to me. Okay. And but you know, I think that we're meant not to know it all. You know what I'm saying? If we knew all this stuff, maybe it wouldn't be helpful. That's why I think it's kept from us. We incarnate. Some people see their past lives. They know about them. Particularly in other cultures where reincarnation is an accepted thing. India, there's a lot of stories of the Dalai Lama. How do they select him? The astrologers go look for him because they know he's born in a precise time and place. What happened when Christ was born? The astrologers, they call them magi, they're astrologers. Read the New Bible. All the Bibles talk about astrologers. They followed the star. What star? Some big star up here? No. It was a star in a chart of a child. 5-pointed star formed by the planet's angles. These 72-degree angles between each point of the chart make a 5-pointed star. And they knew where he'd be born because of longitude and latitude. They could figure that out. Just like the Dalai Lama was until 1948, the invasion by China was selected the same way. Okay? All right. Oh, boy, I got going, didn't I? You're supposed to keep me on path here, guys. Okay, let's go back to this astrology stuff. Okay, so-called sun sign horoscopes. We're going to get off of that. It's nothing. Don't get caught on it. But you know, it's fun to read because you can learn something maybe about some of the influences they're talking about, but not likely. Each planet has a function. I talked about the moon indicates your emotions, Mars your energy. A sign affects how the planets function. Now this is important. Any planet in the sign of Aries, for instance, will tend to be extra active. in the sign of Pisces, or on the other hand, will tend to be function more through the imagination. Okay, Pisces is just literally that. It's illusions. That's what Neptune and Pisces is. It's shadows on the wall. You know what a movie is? It's the shadows on the wall. Think about it. It's really what it is. So that's an illusion. People that have a strong Piscean nature very often are poetic, dreamy, wistful, you know. And you can sometimes be around people and they kind of reveal who they are. Sometimes people say, well, if you're good at astrology, what sign am I? I love that challenge because I half the time can't get it. Because I don't spend time with them. If I spend time, I listen to them, I pick up things. We picked up a hitchhiker one time and in a university campus, and he's talking to me and he said, circuitous. Use the word circuitous. I thought, wow, that's an unusual word. Circuitous, where'd that word come from? I turned around and said, you must be a Pisces. He says, well, how'd you know that? Pisces, full circle, it's the last sign. Circuitous. It just rang a bell with me. So I see my wife's doing it all the time now it was just yesterday or somebody, she said, you must be a Virgo. Oh, we went to dinner with a friend. And we're out there and she's talking about her organized life and how she organizes her dates, and her dates have to follow her schedule. And boy, she's just going to do, you know, she's working towards her doctorate. And Elena Turner says, you must be a Scorpio, you must be a Virgo. And of course she was. So you pick those things up when you're around people, all right? All right, so the houses show where your life planet is working the most. Any planet in the second house, for example, will affect your money and possessions. Any planet in the fifth house will affect your love and romance. Fifth house rules romance, love. It's the sun sign. Leo, fifth house, the sun. All that's romance. What did I tell you yesterday on the phone? I said you do well in romance, but not marriage. Why? Because she's got a perfect aspect between Jupiter and Venus. But she's got an afflicted Saturn in her seventh house. Okay? That also told me a lot about her father, and I had a hard time getting it from her. I said, your mother and dad were something wrong with her, something divorced or something. Didn't I say that to you? You said, well, no, you know, I forget how you told me. And I was thinking I was way off base with you. And I thought, what's going on here? And Neptune opposes Saturn in her chart. And I knew something about Neptune. Neptune can be very elusive. It can be a mystery. It can be something that, if it affects the father, it can be death through poisoning. For example, alcohol poisoning. Neptune rules alcohol and drugs, okay? And then she finally tells me, you might don't mind to share that.
My father was gassed in the war. He had mustard gas, and he died very young. But he also was a prisoner of war.
All the mysteries behind it. And didn't you tell me they thought he came back?
That's right.
Listen to this story.
They prayed for him at the
Church?
church, and then months later he
Appears. Strange story, isn't it? So Neptunian, mystery and illusions and all that stuff. That's what I see, though, but I don't always know exactly how it happens. And I'm thinking, is it poison? Is alcohol maybe? You know, maybe alcoholic, you know. No, he was mustard poisoned. So fitting to that, see, because gases and alcohol and all that's Neptunian. Okay? So it's hard to see and hard to put your fingers on. So when I'm doing these readings, I'm seeing these charts. I don't know you know, I never met you before, but I see things.
What's that got to do with me?
It's the formation of your life. It's it's where what influences and impacts came into your experience as a young person that's affected you throughout your life. You know, I remember you had Uranus in the ninth house. You should be an astrologer. Ninth house Uranus is a teacher. Okay, I told you that over the phone. I said, I'm a teacher. I said, you are a teacher, but you could also be teaching this. Okay? See, how do you see that? I don't know. I'm going to try to teach you how. Okay, I can give it to you a little bit at a time. But the whole bit is, this is a life study. Don't go out of here today and say, oh my God, it's just too much. You know, it's easy to do that. I want you to be on a life journey. This isn't a class of 5 weeks. This is 50 years if you're lucky, not you and I. But for some of you, it could be, right? Geez, if I have another 50, I'm in good shape. See, 76 add 50, what do I get? Boy, I tell you, I live to be a long time. So what I'm saying is that this is a lifetime study. you know, and it'll keep you entertained always. You'll never be bored. I told you I've been laid up in the hospital. I'm the most popular guy in there. All the girls, nurses are in there getting readings. Ron, read my chart. All I got to, back then when I started doing it, I had to write up and do a chart. I had to know logarithms, and I knew Greenwich Mean Time and local mean times, and I had to know all these different things. Today you don't have to do that. You open up your computers and you can just knock out a chart instantly. Take out your phone and knock out a chart instantly. Okay? It's all right. It's all right, Zeus. You're too late. She left. Okay. Okay. All right. So, okay. Houses. So when I talked about your 8th house, first thing I said, what's 8th house? Everybody said death. You all knew that. Her moon's in the 8th house. That's how it gives more meaning. So these are the way you started, and then the aspects are the main things. That's what I really want you to get. Remember last week I put up that cross with all these planets on them and let you see how they interact? You're going to get more of that. It's in your workbook. Yes, hon?
The houses, are they, this is 1, 2, how does it go?
Yeah, it starts right here. 1,
Okay.
2, 3, 4. See it says there?
Mhm.
4,
Okay.
5.
Okay.
So the first house is called your ascendant. It's very important, ascendant. It's your I am house. I have Sagittarius rising, so I'm called a double Sag. I'm a Sun in Sag, and I have my ascendant is Sagittarius. They call it a double Sag because Sagittarius is a very powerful influence on my ascendant. It's a very powerful. Your 7th house is your mate, the person across on the other side. Find out a little bit about who you would be attracted to and who you'd like to marry. Okay, and who you shouldn't marry. Okay, anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of these aspects and see how they work and understand them. Okay. Okay, we talked about this. Remember I told you last week, houses never change. First house is always first house. Okay, the signs and the planets move through those 12 houses. You need to know that. Okay, the ascendant or the rising sign, that's that point over here in your chart, the first house. Okay, let me clean this up a little bit and I'll kind of show it to you. All right. So, all right. Okay. All right, this is always the first house right here in your chart. And it's called your ascendant right here, ascendant. And why is it called the ascendant? Because that's where the sun rises, the planets rise in the east. That's your eastern angle. So if you're born at 6 o'clock in the morning, roughly around summertime when the sun comes up about 6 o'clock, then your sun's going to be right here. But if you're born at 6 a.m. in December, when the sun isn't going to rise that early, it'd be further down, because it takes longer to rise in winter. If you're born at 12 noon, it's going to be up here. It's called the midheaven, MC. Midheaven, they call it. Medium coli. And then this is the descendant. Okay? Now, this is your second house. This is, we say, the house of money and resources, things like that. It's associated with, as Aries is the first house, associated with Aries. And the first house are associated. Mars rules that. And the second house is Taurus. We call it the house of money, possessions, resources. If you go to the next house, it's communication, it's a language, it's travel, short trips, it's elementary education, basic education. The opposite house is the 9th is higher education, philosophy, religion. I told you have your Uranus in the 9th house, the house of philosophy, higher understanding, and religion. That's where you would do well with Uranus. Uranus rules astrology. Uranus rules what? The awakened one. It's the knowledge sign. It's this kind of, I know. What is knowledge? Think about it. Your knowledge just comes from what? Your ability to be here now. Those of you that are doing well in a class are staying in touch with the teacher. You're not thinking about, I got to pick up my bread when I go back. I got to call so-and-so because if I don't, they're, you're slipping off away from me. So you're not really focused, are you? So now the teachers call it attention deficit disorder. Let's give them a pill and we're going to cure it. BS. The problem is they've never been taught as children to focus, to meditate, to reflect, to be centered. And so they haven't got that ability. And so we're losing our kids in school because they're distracted by TVs, cell phones, games, everything that takes them away from being a good student. Huh? So their mind's flitting here and there. Yes, you're a teacher, you know that.
Did you take my chart?
Did I take your chart?
It's over there on the desk. Would you please?
I'll give it back. My gosh, girl. Okay. All right. So, is all this coming together a little bit for you? I know I flip all around everywhere, but you know what? Just keep with it. It'll be exciting. It's an exciting venture if you stay on it. All right. Now, okay, the ascendant, you know what that is? The rising sign, the horoscope. Okay. All right. It's by the way, what's on your ascendant can affect the way you appear. Okay? Like I was blessed because I got Venus rising in the east when I was born. Oh, isn't that great? That makes me attractive. I wish. But it did. When I was younger, I was a much better looking guy, but that gives me appearance is form. Venus gives generally a beautiful form, I don't mean to be, it's nothing egotistical, but I'm just telling you that Saturn there can do the opposite. It can make you feel more stunted and growth, and it can make you sometimes have a harder look, okay? Because that's your ascendant. That's an important part of the chart. So whatever you have ascending, and planets ascending and sign ascending, for example, Capricorn ascending, will often give darker hair and darker complexion. Saturn on the ascendant can do the same thing, okay? So all this is there. There's so much here. There's so very much. We talk about the midheaven. The midheaven's important. That's the top of the chart, place at the very top. The 10th house is this house here. And the 10th house affects your career, your standings in the community, your reputation, what goals and achievements you want to do. It's Capricorn's, basically. It's Capricorn's house, which is Saturn ruled. And what is Saturn? It's the goat climbs to the top of the mountain. Okay, it's kind of like what people want to do. They want to be in control. They want to have power. If you have a lot of 10th house energies, you may be very controlling. You may be a boss. You may be somebody that wants to be in charge. You may rise to high power. If you have the sun in there, your star may shine in that. You may become well-known and famous. That house can tell a lot about those things. The interesting thing about the 10th house is, by the way, you remember Nixon, President Nixon was a Capricorn. Did you know that? Yeah. And what caused his fall? Cussing constantly. Paranoia. Breaking into the Watergate and trying to find out what his enemies are doing. Yeah, all that stuff, And think of his name. I'm always amused by it. Nix, my gosh, Words are amazing. He almost died of a blood clot. Did you know that? In his knee. Guess what Capricorn rules? Your knees. And what is blood clots? You know what clotting is? Coagulation, hardening of something, of your blood. What does Saturn do? Coagulation. You ever seen the goat's head made into a star? It's called the Gota Mendae, the Mendaces. Hard. It's the upside down 5-pointed star. Okay? That Gota Mendae means mendacious. Mendacious comes from to be highly hurtful. The Gota Mendae. So Nixon personified all that very much. He was the accuser of his brethren. The spirit of accusing, always accusing. His cursing. They didn't want to release the tapes because there was so much cussing on it. He was so cursing all the time. He was the cursing president. Okay? And he was a caricature always in the cartoons with that big nose, that swoopy nose. Remember those cartoons, Nixon? Some of you are too young to remember that. Okay, but that was Nixon. Okay, and what do you think? What is a cartoon that makes fun of other people called? Do you know what it's called? Huh? What else is it called? What kind of humor is it called? Close? Who said? Good, good. Satire. Where does that come from? Satire. Saturn. Saturn. The accusing spirit. So what is satirical humor? It's poking fun at other people to belittle them, to make them look funny. It's like the pictures of Obama and the cartoons where they make his ears look like this, right? It's satirical humor done in cartoon form. That's Saturn again. He's the accuser of our brethren. A lot of people are good at satirical stuff because they have strong Saturns in their chart. In a way, it's a positive expression of that energy, even though it's hurtful, hurts other people. But that's a way that Saturn works. The word satisfy, where do you think it came from? Saturn. Satiate. I'm going to eat till I'm full. That's satiation. What do you think the early Christians were all about? Fasting and prayer and denying themselves. They were trying to overcome the powers of what? Satiation. Saturn. I'm not going to satisfy. I'm going to be a monk, and I'm going to go in a building, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life denying myself. Huh? Yeah, you got it. Same thing. So we're dealing with energies. Once you learn astrology, your language, you can start loving language too. My book's got a lot of stuff on language in it. Okay? And it reveals the mysteries, you know? It really does. Okay. Okay, the difference between houses and signs is similar to the difference between north, south, east, and west, and left, right, and front and back. The rising sign is always the sign rising on the eastern horizon. I've shown you that many times over here. Okay? The sign changes about once every 2 hours due to the rotation of the Earth. So if you have like I was born with Sagittarius rising here, okay, 2 hours later there's going to be Capricorn here, you know, or roughly. Every 2 hours, there's 24 hours in a day, so there's 12 signs. So that shift of signs is going to happen within 1 day. It's going to go through every 2 hours. It's going to go through a sign. 2 times 12 is 24 hours. You all get that? So the planets are also moving, you see? And the fastest moving of all your influences in your chart is your moon. So the only thing in a chart that you don't know the time is maybe the moon could be off, okay? Yours is, I hit your chart pretty accurate because I knew when I did your chart, just a little quickly reading here, I know your time's good. Even though you don't know your time, I couldn't have picked what I did if it had been wrong. You see what I'm getting at? So you need to know that yes. Huh? Oh, I'm talking about her back. I'm sorry. I should do better with names. It takes me a while sometimes. But the point I'm getting at is that the time, the moon rather moves 12 degrees a day. That's almost half a sign. So if you were born with the moon near an end of a sign and you didn't know your time, let's say you didn't know your time, but we do a sunrise chart, and the moon's near the end of a sign, it may be in the next sign by the time we actually get the accurate time. You see what I'm getting at? If you're born 12 hours later, something like that. Anyway, so the fastest moving part of your chart is the moon. That's the part that would be the hardest to determine if you didn't know a time of a birth. But we do what we call sunrise charts when we don't know. We usually do that. Puts the sun right on the ascendant rising in the east. That's all we can do if we don't know. Okay, so, let's keep moving here. Yeah, remember the houses are just that. They're just spaces of 30 degrees each. The houses show where in your life they may have an effect. Remember we had the moon in the 8th house? That meant, the house meant it had given another meaning to it, didn't it? Okay. Okay, the cardinal signs, they change, they charge right in, they do the job. They fall flat on their face depending on the situation. They're Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Now, the cardinal signs, you all have this in your book, by the way, the workbook I gave you. All these cardinal, fixed, and mutable. What is all that about? The cardinal signs are the Aries, Cancers, Libra, and Capricorn. And those signs like to be in charge. They take charge. They're good for leadership signs generally. You wouldn't think Cancer is, but some of the best leaders in the world are Cancerians. Okay? What's your sign? Capricorn? Good leadership sign, see? You like to be in control too. You're a control freak, okay? So anyway, shouldn't do that with you. But anyway, see, but all I know is his sun sign, so how can I read his chart, right? But I mean, you can play with it, right? You usually get pretty close with things like that, So anyway, so everyone has signs somewhere in their horoscope. The cardinal signs show where in your life you will tend to take action. Now, again, cardinal signs are also very physical, okay? If a person has afflictions in their chart and they occur mostly in those cardinal signs, it can be much more physical problems. For example, Cancer rules the stomach, okay? Capricorn, the knees and the skeletal frame, you see? Libra, the kidneys and the reins. All the signs are associated with parts of the body, but the cardinals tend to produce much more physical difficulties if they're afflicted. If they're afflicted, not always. So the fixed signs, wait, let's stay with this a minute. Aries, the sign of action, initiative, new beginnings. It charges right in and holds nothing in reserve. People with strong Aries emphasis in their horoscope generally like to be the first. There's a favorite time is now. The location of Aries in your chart shows where you tend to be active, energetic, and take initiative. Okay? Now, let me say something about this Aries thing. And this is it. The contradictory side of the sign that some Aries are more like the sacrificial lamb. They show more timidity and shyness with a little assertiveness, which is a contradiction to the general signs interpretation. We always hear Aries likes to get out and fight and aggressive and all that. There's another side to Aries, and I've seen both. You can't always call it, because sometimes Aries are very meek. Meek. Meek? Help me, teacher. Meek. Shy?
Humble, shy, quiet.
Yeah, not assertive. Okay. So there's a scripture that says the meek shall inherit the earth. Do you know what the actual translation of the word meek in the Bible was, though? It wasn't meek, because we think of it as being kind of like you just described it. But the real meaning of the word meek in the Bible was teachable. That's what they were trying to say. Teachable. Those that are teachable shall inherit the earth. I was vice president of several companies in my lifetime. The worst thing to get is an employee that comes in and knows it all. You can't teach them anything. No, I already know. Don't tell me how to do this. I know how to do it. I say, well, go on and get a job somewhere else. I don't need you. I want to train you and do it my way, okay? Do it my way. Sounds like Frank Sinatra. So what we're going to do here, we're going to know that sometimes there are contradictions. This is one of them I've seen over the years, and so I have to give you my experience, okay? So sacrificial lamb of Aries, it can be both. It can be very sacrificing. All right, okay. Cardinal Libra, sign of reaction. Aries acts like Libra reacts. Aries acts and Libra reacts. Aries is individual action, Libra is joint action. Aries charges right in. Libra is famous for saying, on the other hand. Libra rules manners and social graces, things which make cooperation in civil society possible. The location of Libra in your horoscope shows where you tend to cooperate, seek partners, love peace, quiet harmony, and show a good taste. If you're around a Libra and, you say, well, let's go out and eat. Where would you like to eat? Well, you decide. That's Libra's talk. You decide. They're always conciliatory, right? So they can't make a decision. I mean, they don't want to. They want other people to do it for them. Okay? So, Cancer, the sign of instinctive action. It will figure out a logical solution and then do the opposite because it feels better. Cancer is ruled by the moon, okay? It doesn't have to be logical for Cancers, okay? Okay? It can be enormously tenacious when denied something that it wants. What is the symbol for the Cancer sign? Crab. Do they hold on once they get on? Nah, those little pincers. That's what they do. Cancer is nurturing and emotionally sustaining. Without these qualities, life would be cold indeed. The location of the sign of Cancer in your horoscope shows where you tend to be moody, emotional, instinctive, and intuitive. Where you tend to be moody, emotional, instinctive, and intuitive. Okay? So I see you all looking at your charts, right? Good for you. That's what I want. Look and grow with me. Okay? Okay, here we're back to cardinal Capricorn. Capricorn. Capricorn is a sign of what? It's a sign of Saturn. Capricorn. The word capricious came from Capricorn. Think about that. Capricious. Strange. Language is amazing. Reveals so much. And how much of it's astrological would blow you away if you knew. When you read my book, first chapter, I added that chapter in my newest version. It's not the gifted one I gave you. It's the newest version on Amazon. I actually added a chapter on language because there's so much of it's astrological. Your days of your week, Sunday, Monday, Moon Day, Tuesday, Mars Day, Wednesday, Mercury's Day. They're all related to, to the planets. Okay. Should we give it a break? It's 2:20. I've gone a long way here, and I don't even see the time. I'm not ruled by time. Father Time doesn't do much with Sagittarians. So I'm going to take a break. You can turn the camera off, and we'll get